And moreover, you need to realize that the only way you can become a member of the National Academy of Sciences is if the current members select you. There's no objective criteria for who becomes a member of the National Academy of Sciences. And, back in 1914 and 15, this book, American Men and Women as Scientists, did have a category for the better scientists. But in later editions, they dropped it because they said we don't have an objective criteria for determining who is a better scientist compared to the rest of the scientists. That's still true today. And so we can't just say that the people who are members of the National Academy of Sciences are better. I personally know of a lot of outstanding scientists that have not been nominated to the National Academy of Sciences. And for that matter, those who are members do tend to be atheistic, and who of course, are they going to nominate?
Right.
Other people who believe like them.
So it perpetuates the system.
So personally, I think the most objective surveys are the ones done through the American Men and Women of Sciences, because that would include anybody who has a PhD who's doing research in science. So there you got a more objective database, and you can compare it with people in a similar category 80, 90 years ago. Which can't be done with, quote, the better scientists. So it really does document that the advance of science has not disturbed people's belief in God and an afterlife, either with top scientists or research scientists or with the lay public.
Yeah. Hugh, getting back to this idea of the lay public feeling of frustration over the decades of not having more favor in the public school system, for example, some have taken the battle in a legal or political avenue. I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Kansas, where there have been battles and not very good progress if you look at it from a Christian perspective.
And it really angers the scientific community because it's a bottom-up approach. And what I mean by bottom-up is where they say, well, let's see if we can get the legislators on our side, or let's see if we can get the public school teachers or the students on our side. And if we can get them on our side, they can influence the people above them, like the undergraduate students, and then through them we can influence the graduate students and the faculty and then the top scientists. And, one sense, scientific advance is not a democracy. It's a pursuit of truth. And who best to pursue that truth than people who are the most eminently trained to do that kind of research. And so scientific advance over the past 1,000 years has always been top-down, where the top researchers, those that are the best trained and the most talented, have been the ones that have made the discoveries and working and debating with one another. And the thing I've noticed, too, people who are very talented and well-educated, they have a hard time getting along with one another. They love to debate and argue, and actually that's very helpful in trying to weed out what's not true and what is true. Whereas at the bottom level, people who have no education in science or very little education in science, they typically are unwilling to do that kind of hard work of wrestling with one another and debating with one another and testing their ideas. And so what I argue in the book is, if we want to really change these creation-evolution debates in a positive manner, we need to be targeting the people at the top flight researchers.
All right, Hugh, in that respect, the intelligent design movement is one of the major players. People are familiar at least with the name of that term, if not what they intend to do. But you have terms in the book like Big Tent, Wedge of Truth. Are these strategies then, and what do you think of those types of strategies?
They are strategies, and they flow out of the failure of the political and legal battles that have taken place to try to guarantee a place for creationism at the table of public education and scientific research. And the reason why that failed, and I got a chapter later on in the book where I talk about the court battles and the legal and political battles.
Okay.
And but the reason why it failed, it was one particular creation model that did not fare well under objective testing. In fact, some scientists declared that it fared no better than the flat Earth hypothesis.
Yikes.
So, and really what the courts did is they were not arguing against religious beliefs. They were arguing against religious beliefs that had no scientific credibility. And so their whole point was you can say whatever you want in terms of religious expression, but it's got to have some level of credibility if you're going to bring it into the public education arena. And for that matter, our nation has always discriminated against religious ideas that have zero secular integrity, such as the flat earth hypothesis. A lot of religious people have been promoting that from the very birth of our nation, but notice that our legislators and educators have never allowed that to come into the public education or research arena, and for very good reason. But that doesn't mean that God is outlawed. It just means bad models promoting God's intervention and work in nature. That is not allowed at that level. But as a result, people have gotten the idea that in the United States of America, religion is now illegal in the science, education, and research arena. And based on that mistake, they said we have to present our, quote, creation models under the cover of a non-religious banner. And so that's this kind of unite and win strategy and big tent strategy. Let's pull people in from all different religious perspectives so that no one can charge us with being religious. And so we're simply going to be promoting intelligent design, not God. We're not going to define who the intelligent designer is, and we're going to recruit people from Mormonism, Islam, Hinduism. They've even been recruiting atheists who take the perspective that aliens have brought life here to planet Earth. Basically, it's a united front against the Darwinian explanation for the history of life here on planet Earth. But by recruiting people from all these different philosophical and religious perspectives, they have the veneer of being non-religious. Mind you, the Darwinists haven't bought that one bit. They look at them and say, of course these people have a religious agenda. So
that's the big tent, unite and win.
That's the big tent, and it's also an appeal to Christians that rather than we Christians squabbling over our differences on creation, we need to put all of our differences aside and unite against the Darwinists and defeat them, and then we can discuss our differences. But I argue in the book that that's really a poor strategy for Christians to take. Rather, we Christians need to model that we're willing to test our differences within our own tent, and weed out the models that are not good at explaining the record of nature or the passages of Scripture, and show to the non-Christian community that we're prepared to test our own models. And that will enable them to begin to trust us, that we're actually serious when we say we want to engage you and have your input on putting our models to the test. If we're not willing to do that inside the church, then why are they going to trust us when we say we're willing to have that take place outside the church?
Yeah. Now, Hugh, for someone who might say, well, Dr. Ross, that's well and good, but we just got to get in there somehow. So maybe our strategy is a negative one right now, that you might call it evolution bashing, but that's all we can do right now. We're just trying to point out the shortcomings of evolutionary theory. How would you respond to that?
Well, the scientific community has never responded well to people coming in and showing all their shortcomings. I mean, science, by its very nature, and the fact that we human beings are involved in the scientific research, there's going to be holes in our models. There's going to be things we can't explain. And it's simply based on the fact that we don't know everything. And so the scientists get angry at Christians who do this because they say, look, don't you understand it's a work in progress? But until you can show us something better to take the place of our evolutionary models, you got nothing to say to us. So in that sense, it's almost fruitless to engage in evolution bashing. Where I think it is fruitful is where you can say, here are some shortcomings in your model, but here's another model where those shortcomings don't exist. Scientists will respond to that.